have the highest ceiling in the league. They have now with Marcus Morris a legit 4 guys who can go get you 30 on any given night, with Paul and Kawhi at the top of that list. Kawhi right now is the single best perimeter defender in the league. He's giving up 26%. He's getting to that level he was at in San Antonio. They can be elite with their ball pressure on the perimeter. They're big, they're switchable, they're athletic. I just think they have the highest ceiling. The one vulnerability that they have is on the rebounding aspect of things. They're giving up the second most second chance points. I believe it'll be a Lakers-Clippers finals in the West ultimately, and that'll be one heck of a series.
So with that being said, how concerned are you with Paul George's health and their inability to get games together?
No, this is also one concern, obviously, right, is the continuity. And it's interesting, I had Doc Rivers and the Clippers maybe a week or so before the All-Star break, and he was looking forward to literally this 2-day window. At the time, Paul George hadn't, dealt with that groin injury, and he said that is a critical juncture for us to sort of lock in on what our defensive schemes are, try to build some things. Consider this, what should be their closing lineup, and that could be Lou Williams or it could be Marcus Morris. That group, if it's Lou Williams, has played 18 total minutes all year of clutch time basketball. So five-point spread, 5 minutes or less. They've only been on the floor for 18 minutes. So lack of continuity is a concern.
Doris, everybody waiting for the LA Western Conference Final. Can Denver, Utah, Houston, which one of those teams may have the best shot to kind of disrupt that?
Fascinated, Mike, to watch the grand experiment in Houston. They doubled down, got a couple of more players who are small, switchable, athletic, can make threes. I do think that the size of the Lakers would be problematic for them, the way the Lakers protect the rim with both JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard. To me, the team that might have the highest ceiling, it's a team that's the sum of its parts are what makes it special. Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, the experience they had a year ago in the playoffs, losing to Portland in 7 games, the addition of Michael Porter Jr., the elite defense of Torrey Craig. Jokic, after a very slow start, has been absolutely brilliant. They're deep. They now have some experience, but to me, it still comes down to Lakers-Clippers.
Doris, the Eastern Conference seems a little more sure at the top. It's the Bucks and then everybody else right now. But the team we're all interested in is the Sixers. What do you need to see from Philadelphia in this second half of the season for them to make a run?
I mean, Mike, they may be the team that has the most to work out. Right before the All-Star break, they switch their lineup, right? They take Al Horford out. They're still, managing rotations. They put Furkan Korkmaz in, and he's important because he's one of their shooters, and they need more of that. And then he goes out in a starting role and misses all 5 shots and doesn't score. Listen, they've got 2 of the best players in the league. Joel Embiid is the best low-post force in the game. You have to send an extra defender to him, or he will eat you alive in the post. Ben Simmons, to me, is elite in so many categories. But that fit remains a question. So they're navigating, number one, the pressure of the organization, top to bottom, said, we believe we're championship material. They haven't yet figured out their rotations. They have an impatient fan base. I would say they're the most drama-filled team in the league, and they're going to be fun to watch in the second half.
We're talking to ESPN NBA analyst Doris Burke. Doris, that being said, sticking in the East, I mean, Celtics fans would make an argument that they belong in that conversation. Heat fans are looking at it saying we made the right acquisitions, and the Bucks fans are just looking around saying we're great. So when you look at all of this play out, who do you think is the favorite moving forward in the East?
Well, I don't think you can discount what Milwaukee has done this season. They are historically great protecting the rim, right? They have decided to go all in on taking away restricted area 2s. Brook Lopez and Giannis Antetokounmpo, to me, are both Defensive Player of the Year candidates, and they are special, taking away one of the most efficient shots in basketball. They also defend the corner 3 quite well. There's 2 vulnerabilities, and the referendum will come in the postseason for this team. They give up a ton of above-the-break threes. Teams in their 8 losses have averaged 17 threes on 43% three-point shooting. So if you can get hot and make shots against the Bucks, there's going to be that opportunity. And listen, as much as Giannis has improved from the three-point arc, teams are still going to build a wall and say, we are going to count on Giannis to shoot 31, 32% from three-point territory. They're not going to give them the paint. They're going to take away as much as he can. But I do not believe we can discount what they've achieved. They have a chance to, I mean, our BPI is putting them at 67, 68 wins. Giannis will try to drive them to that 70. They're another team that I just don't think you can discount them. That said, I think Boston is talented, and I love watching them.
Absolutely agree with you on that. Those young stars and that young duo on Boston is fun to watch as any in the league. But Doris, we've kind of separated it into East and West, but I want to give you your whole run of the NBA right now. You get the remainder of the regular season. The thing that Doris Burke is most excited to keep her eye on down the stretch is?
I still think, Mike, that LeBron James is the most compelling player in the league, and he processes information faster than anybody else and can manipulate the game better than anybody else. And I think there are a number of things going on here. He's number one taking the most threes ever in his career. In 55 dunks this year, or 55 games this year versus last year, he's got something like 30 fewer dunks. His career free throw attempts is at its all-time low. Like, I think he's doing a couple of things, making sure Anthony Davis is good to go and comfortable, but I also think he's managing himself for the postseason. He spends more money and more time taking care of his body. He understands exactly what's in play here, a chance at a championship, and I am most fascinated to see how the Lakers finish in this final, as you said, not one half, but more like 1/3 of the season. He's just that compelling, guys.
Doris, we just finished All-Star Weekend in Chicago. Obviously, a lot of the skills competitions turned out to be fantastic, but the game I saw myself really enjoying with the new set of rules. How was it from your perspective?
Absolutely sensational. I said this yesterday. Normally that game is on in the background and I might be dusting or vacuuming, but there has been so little drama that I really wouldn't be tuning in. I couldn't take my eyes off it. I think the NBA has fixed the All-Star game. I was glued to the TV. I thought you saw all kinds of strategy play out. No fast break points, very few dunks, incredible individual defense. Chris Paul going absolutely nuts over calls. And you know what I think was the most fantastic thing about the weekend, guys? Like, you were honoring David Stern and Kobe Bryant, and you somehow managed to have the touch, the deft touch, to pay tribute to those men who were so influential in the league, and yet give the fans everything you would hope an all-star to be. Just an incredible job by the NBA, and maybe other leagues should sort of think about how they do their showcase event.
Well, Doris, that one seemed to work. Now, one of the other things the NBA is talking about, do you think will be implemented, and that's the mid-season tournament they're talking about?
You know, I think the interesting thing is they're modeling this after the European soccer model. But the fact of the matter is there are deep roots and tremendous history and meaning for all of those organizations that participate. So if we go in this direction, we've got to be willing to give it time, because you have to get these players invested in it. So if we go that direction, there's going to be an adjustment period, because you've got to build some equity with your fan base, with your players. Find a way to make it meaningful.
You guys can follow her on Twitter at HeyDB. Doris, as always, we appreciate your insight. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Doris.
I'm telling you, this is going to be a sprint to the finish. And we keep joking about the fact that it's the last third of the season, but that's significant. I mean, there's a lot left to see in this back third. She mentioned the 76ers and what they need to do. I still think the Clippers, and can they actually put their team together on the floor for enough games to have any rhythm and continuity going into the playoffs, is going to be part of what we should have an eye on.
It's super interesting. And she mentioned LeBron James. What a perfect storm for LeBron James, kind of re-rising to power in a season where you had Kevin Durant off the court, right? Like the guy that was maybe closest proximity. He's completely off the court. You mentioned the Clippers and Kawhi Leonard, who have been intermittently involved in all this. We might see Kawhi do the postseason thing again, but LeBron James has looked yet again like one of the most dominant, if not the most dominant players in the league.
I agree. But what she said, too, about Houston and the avenue they're going with small ball, and they're looking to pick up DeMar Carroll and Jeff Green, I think as early as today, 2 more roster spots there. So where this team can go. Remember, Denver's second in that conference right now, and we're going to get into ratings a little later too on Denver. And boy, I'm stunned how ugly it is in Denver from the rating standpoint, really for the entire league. But Denver right there.
I feel like with Denver and Houston, those are both teams none of us believe, right? Because of like we did this with Denver last year. We did the whole second and first place in the Western Conference, and then we got to the postseason, and the team that we were all hesitant to buy in on lost and gave us all reason to continue buying in on that. Houston has been slamming their head into that brick wall of Golden State for a few years now, and you've all of a sudden, I think, gotten closer and closer to us saying, all right, maybe this style of supreme ISO ball can't be the winner for you, even with a guy as great as James Harden adding another MVP in Russ.
I mean, you're talking about Houston hitting their head against the wall. Those Houston teams were really good, right? So you're looking at saying, man, we could try and find in the past years some line where we're like, you know what, there's not that big of a difference between Houston and Golden State. We try to find that. Everybody at this point believes that the talent differential between the Lakers, Clippers, and everybody else is just substantial. And I'll continue to go back to, you mentioned hitting the head against the wall. I think that's why people aren't buying in on Milwaukee. Until we see Giannis do it in a 7-game series. And I'm all bought in on Milwaukee.
Say, are people really that out on Milwaukee? Because I've heard you say that. And I don't know if I really feel like we've kind of put them off to the side because they're so far out ahead.
Who are we in on?
Well,
if you're not, I think
Stephen A. and Max have been all in on the Heat ever since they acquired Iguodala, and you're starting to see more love nationally come for the Celtics. All of a sudden, we're looking for a reason the 76ers can put it together.
But I think that's just it, because we're looking for someone to challenge.
I agree.
The Bucks have been so heads and tails, and so much. Yeah. The Bucks have been like one of these Western Conference teams. That's why it's them with the LA teams as the 3-bag that we put at the top of this thing. But I think we've set them aside because they've been so good.
I think
we're searching for one of these other Eastern Conference teams.
I think we put them aside and we're saying who's the team that most likely can compete against them. Philly is that one to look at. Now, you have Joel Embiid, saying it's BS that these guys can work out their offensive issues. It's like, okay, feel free to do it anytime soon.
Yeah, whenever you'd like to get to that.
Ready.
On the road. Do it on the road.
Oh, well, we'll keep the NBA talk coming, but coming up next, a quarterback not named Tom Brady has to be discussed, and it could make a huge difference to the AFC landscape. We'll discuss it after this SportsCenter update.
Ryan Newman to the lead of the Daytona 500.
With drafting help from Ryan Blaney, Denny Hamlin is back to third. Chris Buescher fourth. Does anybody have anything left for the race leader? Ryan Newman off turn 4. Checkered flag is waving at the start-finish line. Who will get here first? Newman down. Oh, he's going to get turned. Ryan Blaney, Denny Hamlin across the line. Denny Hamlin will go back-to-back. Newman flipping across the start-finish line in an amazing finish.
A wild finish that you heard there on Motor Racing Network. Denny Hamlin wins his third Daytona 500 in 5 years, but the race unfortunately marred by a really brutal crash. Denny won by 14 milliseconds to become the 4th driver to win the Daytona 500 in consecutive years, and the first in Sterling Marlin, who did it in 94-95. Denny Hamlin also joins Richard Petty as the only drivers to win the Daytona 500 3 times in a 5-year span. As for Ryan Newman, who you heard there involved in the crash, certainly everyone thinking and praying for him after that last lap wreck. He was taken to the hospital. His injuries, thankfully, are thought to be non-life-threatening. Switching gears and moving on to some basketball, the Rockets not done making moves after the trade deadline. According to ESPN's Tim McMahon, Jeff Green has agreed to sign with the Rockets. Green averaged just over 7 points with the Jazz this year, but he's known much more for tough perimeter D and his ability to guard bigs. DeMar Carroll also agreed to a buyout with the Spurs and will likely sign with the Rockets upon clearing waivers, this according to league sources telling our own Adrian Wojnarowski. And more basketball tonight on ESPN. You can watch number 10 Kentucky versus LSU on the men's side as the Wildcats travel down to Baton Rouge. This game is important because Kentucky holds a 1-game lead over LSU and Auburn for the best record in SEC play. Kentucky lost last year's meeting by 2 points, but has never lost consecutive games to LSU since Coach Cal arrived in Lexington back in 2009-2010 season. The Wildcats are 11-3 in the Cal era versus LSU.
SportsCenter brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Straight Talk Wireless has the full court cell phone coverage you need. Get the unlimited plan with 25 gigs of high-speed data, then 2G for just $45 a month. saving you up to half the cost of the big carriers. Everything for less. Savings may vary. Check out terms and conditions at straighttalk.com.
Robert Kraft said he wanted him to either be a Patriot or retire.
I think it's hard to forecast what Tom Brady's going to do because I don't think he knows yet, and he's going to go through this free agency process and decide.
It's Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN News. Presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. It's rare that Twitter points out something, but I will fall on the sword here, as Dustin tweeted us and said, how do you guys do a complete segment with Doris Burke, talk about the Eastern Conference, and completely ignore the second-place team that just won 15 in a row, the Raptors? That is a fair point.
Listen,
that was a miss
No,
by
it's
me.
not.
We threw it out there, and she picked the team she wanted to pick.
No, I
We
mentioned a
asked
bunch
about
of
the
tips.
Sixers because they're interesting and they yell at each other and they're really bad on the road. This isn't hard to figure out.
I missed the Raptors.
No one's missed the Raptors.
listen,
we acknowledge they're 15.
I'm glad
game
at least
streak.
you'll take the blame and understand just what a poor job you're doing.
Thank
Yeah,
you. You know what?
it
I'm going
is
to be
your
better.
fault. You know what? That's fine.
Toronto,
If
I'm going to
you
be
want to
better.
say it's your fault,
Yeah,
that's
say it's
fine.
your
I'm
fault.
It's
not
completely
apologizing.
It usually is. All right, Golic and Wingo. Jason fits in for Trey with Mike Golic Jr. And the Wolfpack grows by one is ESPN NFL insider Field Yates joins us in studio, giving us the Straight Talk brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Everything for less, only at Walmart. If you could just take a minute here, tell us every quarterback where they're going to go, and we could just end the whole thing. Like, we could end the whole discussion.
I thought I was coming in with some Fred Van Vliet and Norman Powell takes, but we can talk quarterbacks if that's what you are so inclined to do.
I
Because we're
guess.
now just a month away. And I think that the good news is that we can use today as a 1 month countdown to NFL free agency. The bad news is that we still have another month until NFL free agency. And what we have seen over the past, I would say really, it's not even the past 2 weeks since the Super Bowl. But this is several months now, right? It's no mystery that Tom Brady was going to become a free agent, or Drew Brees was scheduled to become a free agent, or Dak Prescott. Now, we've learned some things, like that Phillip Rivers will for certain not return to the Los Angeles Chargers. But there is still so much information that we still have ahead of us. And I think that not this week, but next week will be a pivotal one in the free agency market, even if we don't hear anything publicly. The 32 teams descend upon the great city of Indianapolis for the NFL Combine, and we obviously know it as probably the premier pre-draft event for 300 or so of the best prospects. But it's also a great time for teams to meet with agents and to speak with those agents about these quarterbacks. I don't know that we're not going to have a Schefter tweet from the end of the Combine saying, hey, here's Tom Brady is going, here's where Drew Brees is going, here's what's going to happen with Jameis Winston and Dak Prescott. But teams will have a much better feel for what the market is for quarterbacks, what they're looking for, who they're speaking with, and also vice versa. Quarterbacks will know, hey, listen, maybe in his mind, Teddy Bridgewater says, I might be a good fit for the Bears. Maybe they go to the Combine and they realize, we're not going there. We're more invested in Mitch Trubisky than maybe Teddy Bridgewater imagined. So we're a month away, but the good news is that we do have some pertinent conversations that are coming up that get us closer to the goal line. And then soon enough, you can start printing your jerseys, do your updated fantasy projections, imagine who's going to win. And then if Tom Brady leaves the Patriots, we could have, to me, the most substantial offseason story in terms of player movement of the past, decade at least, right? At least.
Field, what has to happen first in that conversation? Because we've had so much discussion about that relative to lately the Dallas Cowboys. For you, first domino that has to fall, Dak Prescott and his contract, or what happens with Tom Brady?
I think it's Tom Brady because I think that Dak is bound for the franchise tag. I think that Dak will take care of himself at some point between the window, which I think it opens February 23rd this year. It's 15-day window for teams to decide on the franchise.
Is February 25th.
Okay, there you go. February 25th.
I said it with conviction, so I'm hoping it's right.
Okay, I'm rusty, so I would fact check you on that. Franchise transition tag window opens. Teams have the chance to use them, and obviously Dak Prescott's the most notable quarterback franchise tag candidate. Ryan Tannehill sort of in the mix as well among some other players. So I think that's where Dak takes care of himself. Brady's the most substantial domino because where Tom Brady is different than other quarterbacks is that there are other quarterbacks who might give you a comparable chance to win next year, but Tom Brady is not just a football investment. He's a business investment. If you're the Los Angeles Chargers or you're the Las Vegas Raiders fan right here, Fitz, you go to Las Vegas, and wouldn't it be nice to have the most accomplished and greatest quarterback in NFL history to be leading your huddle as you debut your new stadium to your new fan base, which even though that fan base will not just be people that are, that call Las Vegas home, it'll be sort of a smorgasbord of visitors, one of the great cities to visit in the country, obviously. Tom Brady, whatever you pay him, he's going to make you probably double that conservatively in terms of business, right? I mean, jersey sales and ticket sales and just general business surrounding your franchise. Tom Brady's worth more than that. So I think that he is going to be the first domino that matters most. And if he signs elsewhere, game on. Who knows? If he stays in New England, and there's plenty of reasons to believe that he could stay in New England. Now, the door is open to him leaving, but still, no one will be stunned if Tom Brady stayed with the Patriots for another year. Then all of a sudden you're sitting there saying to yourself, okay, well, it's interesting carousel, but it's less compelling if he stays in New England.
You're going to see, I think, a similar scene to Zion Williamson being signed from the ticket office of whatever team comes there.
No doubt.
The celebration, because it's not just a great player. It's like we said with Zion, it's box office.
Yeah, without question there. Is the money basically going to be, we heard the Raiders 2 for $60. Is that basically what everybody will, nobody's going to try and shortchange the guy, but do you think they'll end up a bidding war for him, or do you think that's probably going to be the number?
I think, logically, that's the range, because the top of the market right now is $35 million per year, which is Russell Wilson when he signed that 4-year, $140 million extension last year. And we'll have Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson potential deals this offseason. And you'd imagine certainly Mahomes would reset the market. But if some team offers Tom Brady 2 years and $80 million, okay, that's a whole different kettle of fish. So that to me just feels far-fetched. And I understand that you're going to make more than that from a business investment, but still you got
a cap.
There's a cap. There's a cap, yes. So you got to be able to afford the rest of your teams. And I mentioned the Vegas Raiders and the Chargers as well. Like, they already have a lot of highly paid players on the roster, especially the Chargers, who have a good roster. So I would think it's somewhere but you can't get Tom Brady for $20 million. It's probably not $25 million other. I think somewhere there's a sweet spot, somewhere between $30 and I would say $35 million for Tom Brady. And it may be, and for him, by the way, the decision it may be a whole lot more nuanced than, hey, do I want $35 million a year from, again, just making this up, the Vegas Raiders versus 33 from the Patriots or 31 from the Patriots? Like, I think Tom Brady will be okay. Tom Brady, he'll be fine financially no matter what he does. Certainly he wants to be paid fairly. At the same time, he is a player that is fortunate enough to be able to make decisions that are not simply driven by getting the most amount of money from whoever pays him.
You guys can follow him on Twitter at Field Yates. Keep up with everything. Field, you look dapper today, by the way.
Thank you.
And tan. Where the hell were you?
I was just a day ahead of Wingo. Trey was in Hawaii, and I think he's coming back sometime soon. Right?
He gets back. I believe he gets back tomorrow. We think.
We think he's back tomorrow. I didn't want to put him on the spot there and say he's back tomorrow, and then have him be like, "Yeah, I got delayed for a week and a half or something like that." But yeah, I've been in Hawaii.
Thanks
when
for the
I come
invite.
back. It's freezing, and I need to know who I must pay to procure one of these Golic and Wingo bomber jackets.
Listen, Field, it's in a pretty exclusive club, but I feel like I know a guy. We might be able to hook you up. Let's talk after the show. You can tell me where I can get a suit like that at a steep discount, because I know you probably get the hookup like that, and I'll exchange, get you one of these bombers that's certainly a comparable price.
This jacket might fit you snugly, and that jacket might fit me.
Oh, jersey swap moment for me and Field after this one. Can't wait. I'll meet you in the hallway, buddy.
All right, coming up as we move forward towards the stretch run of the NBA season, more alarming evidence that people aren't watching in key markets. Why? We'll break it down. Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2.